Greetings, and welcome to Stuffology. We're two little friends sit around and talk BS, Beatles stuff, on a track-by-track basis, pretty much for the sake of it. My name is JG McQuarrie. I'm here with my co-host, Andrew Deakin. Say hi, Andrew.
Hello, how are you?
I'm perfectly cromulent, thank you. How are you?
I'm sounding upbeat, but actually I've been, um, you know, at the end of many TV and radio programs, I suppose even podcasts these days, people say if you've been affected by anything, by the issues raised in this episode. Well, I was out this morning driving back and had Radio 4 on. Yes, thank you very much. I'm perfectly happy with that choice. And the latest episode of their series about soul music came on, and it was about Blur's Tender from the 13 album, which is, just an awesome song. Anyway, but it's always one of those programs that sort of gets you in the feels because people have their own stories about these songs, about what it means to them and how it relates to their lives. And there was some, really kind of uplifting slash harrowing, but still thoughtful and moving stories. And I got myself a little emotional. And I think that's kind of relevant today because when you actually think about the song itself, it's relatively simple and straightforward, and yet it packs an enormous punch. So that is, I think, so. Well, okay. So, in fairness, I don't think the song we're talking about today packs an enormous punch.
I was going to say, I mean,
It maybe tweaks your nasal hairs, but it certainly, can get you in the right part of the emotional spectrum in a way, maybe on the right day. And so if any day is going to be that day, it's going to be a day when I've had the feels tugged by, or the nasal hairs tugged by something else considerably more emotional.
okay. So if you've been tugged by any of the issues in this podcast,
Yes. Yes,
lovely.
absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
well, thank you for that. I guess we should tell people what we're actually talking about this episode, which is It's Only Love. And yeah, well, you've given us a good kickoff, so go on. Give
Yeah.
us the
So
feels, man.
we're on side two of Help, and it's well underway, and we're pushing on through the non-filmic music. And I wouldn't necessarily call the whole of this side filler, but it's certainly things that were either not deemed good enough for the album or not recorded soon enough to even be considered. And my view of it from elements of the song is that this could have been one that was good enough to get on the album, but perhaps was recorded so late that they didn't really bother to put much of an effort into some things like the lyrics.
I think if there's one area this song falls down on that is relatively uncontroversial, it's probably the relatively low quality of the lyrics. I don't think you're going to get an awful lot of pushback on that. But you're in a very upbeat mood this episode, and you're
Yeah,
you're feeling the positivity. So
I mean,
I mean, obviously
melodically,
everybody's
it's
aware
very
of
interesting.
the critical consensus around this song, which is not positive. I think it is fair to say. But if you're feeling so upbeat, I think you should take it on. Tell us why does it not deserve its reputation?
The beauty of the internet is that you will find people out there who will say that this is a beautiful song, this is the best ever song, this is this, that, and the other. It's fine. It's got a very un-Lennon melody in a sense that it's got a melody, and it's kind of playful. It jumps around. There's you've got those opening lines with that really kind of interesting descending melody, which he sings really really well. It's so kind of clear. Um, there are bits that are where perhaps he's going a little bit higher where it doesn't quite work. Um, but it's just very pleasantly put together. Even that little, it's only brief, but there's an instrumental introduction of about 7 or 8 seconds that really introduces it, beautifully. And there's the end of the song. I mean, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's just under 2 minutes, but it kind of, at a point where they could have gone into an instrumental break and then gone round again, you have John doing this, um, you know, singing part of the melody to go out to, and you just think it's the right time for it to finish. I mean, I will say that I think the guitar sound, in my view, is pretty irritating, and one of the least interesting guitar sounds that I've heard on this album. But gently descending melody, the flow from the first chorus into the second verse is pleasing. Some of the way in which the lines are cut up is relatively fresh and innovative, and it feels like a song that could have had a really nice feel to it overall if a little bit more care had been put in. And it makes me wonder, you know, why don't when bands sing songs or singers sing songs that come from earlier in their career that have bit iffy lyrics, why don't they ever change them when they then sing them live 20 years down the road? Why are they so wedded to the original lyrics?
You do occasionally get songs that are revised when they're played live. Although, unfortunately, the only example I could now immediately think of is REM and Little America and Jefferson, I think, were
Jefferson.
lost, which has been dropped to Washington after Jefferson Holt scandal thing broke. I'm sure that other examples exist, but for some reason, that's the first one that came to mind.
Because this is not, I mean, this is not classic Lennon poetry. And this is the bizarre thing as well, because around this point, he is writing silly, absurdist poetry. He is putting a lot of thought into his writing and his craft. And yet we get, why should I feel the way I do? It's only love and that is all. But it's so hard loving you. Is it right that you and I should fight every night? I quite like that, by the way, the fact that the next line is so short. Just the sight of you makes nighttime bright, very bright. Again, the shortness of the second line I like, but the lyric, bland beyond belief.
Yeah, it's not a great representation of what he can achieve as a lyricist. And I'm not as positive about this song as you are. I think it's fair to say. It's not like the chorus is good. I think the chorus does have a good punch to it, and there's a bit of enthusiasm in the way that Lennon sings the chorus, which is really effective. It suddenly sounds like he means it, but in the verse, he's obviously not taking it seriously. He obviously is
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
taking the piss. Obviously, there's the laugh line on "very bright,"
yes.
but it's not just that. Like he's just not putting in all that much effort. But then, for whatever reason, when it gets to the chorus, it switches up, and we get this kind of sort of strangely impassioned, belting out of the chorus, and I really like that. I wish the rest of the song was taken as well, I don't want to say straightforwardly, but sincerely, maybe that's the word, as that is. But given the weakness of the lyric, I understand why that would be hard to be invested in.
So I think this is a relevant time to bring up the one cover version that I think really works, and that's Bryan Ferry's cover
Oh,
from
that's
his
interesting.
1976 album Let's Stick Together, which is basically is an album of covers, including some remaking of some Roxy Music songs in, the old jazz style. And I listened to it not quite knowing what to expect. I am aware of elements of the Roxy Music canon, as it were. When we were reaching our probably our first understanding of pop music, the Avalon album would have been out, and the very slick, very glossy one, and then of course you see things like Virginia Plain at the other end of the Roxy Music career, so you can see what they're capable of. But I have to say, you really get a sense that he knows how to put a song together. He knows how to put an arrangement together, and he knows how to put his all into the song. And I wanted to find it funny. I wanted it to be like the Vic Reeves Club Singer type thing. But I really liked it. I thought his version of it shows what you could do with this song. And so at first I started thinking, why on earth would you pick this? This is such a weird song to pick. But listening to what he did with it, I just thought, got it. Yeah. Why not go for one of the more shall we say, obscure ones and do something with it rather than doing one that everybody knows. Did you listen to it?
I did, and I had precisely the opposite reaction. I thought it was appalling. I just
Wow.
like I don't mind a bit of Roxy music. Like For Your Pleasure is a good album. Of course, I love Virginia Play. I'm not a massive Bryan Ferry fan. Really, I'm not.
No.
But like early Roxy music, like Brian Eno Roxy music, I have a bit of affection for. Like The Stand is great song. Like it's all there's good material in there. So it's not that I'm predisposed against
Yeah.
either him as an artist or what he's done. And of course, ultimately one of the things he's most famous for is covering a John Lennon song, Jealous Guy, which is awful. It's a terrible cover version. And this continues that ignoble tradition. I really, really disliked this. I just thought it sounded so, I don't know, not even bad. I want to say bad, but that's not exactly it. Just misjudged. I just felt everything about it felt like really off kilter, but not in an interesting way. Like you could do that. You could take a counterintuitive cover version. Like you could do like an electronica version of this, or you could do something which was like the Lounge Lizard thing or whatever. But I don't know, it really didn't work for me to the point where I
That's
literally went
so
next door and said to
interesting.
my other half, "Oh my God, I've just hurt my ears." I really, really reacted strongly to this. I did not like it.
This is, dear listener, a precursor of the Joe Cocker conversation that will come up in about 3 years' time.
Yeah, yeah. This is this is
Um,
this is this is the warm up bout.
yeah, yeah. Well, do you know what? I'm not going to try and win you over because it's always going to be a subjective thing, and people always have different reasons for liking or not liking a song. I just didn't expect to like it, and I found it utterly beguiling, and I
That's really
found that
interesting.
there was like a sincerity to it where he actually seemed to. I thought he sounded like he really liked this song and wanted to draw something out of it. But there you go. I mean, it's quite interesting because some of the songs on the album, there's some very interesting choices on there, and again, he really gives it all. He really sounds like he likes these songs and wants to do stuff with them. But also, it's worth pointing out that some of the other things he picks also have some pretty terrible lyrics. So there's an Everly Brothers song on there, for example, that opens with the lines, "Wine is sweet and gin is bitter. Drink all you can, but you won't forget her." Now, I'm obviously, I'm playing up the rhythm. That's not how it is, but the fact that you've got "gin is bitter" rhyming with "you won't forget her," you've got to sing it "forget," haven't you? I mean, you
Yeah.
forget like in that American accent. So actually, do you know what? Maybe John's lyrics aren't all that bad.
No, I think they are. It's just other people are also capable of writing really bad lyrics. I don't think it's something that's particularly unique to Mr. Lennon when he has to
No,
deliver this. Did you listen to the anthology version of this?
no.
Okay, it's pretty much as is. It's got a less interesting Ringo drum pattern on it, but it's relatively unilluminating, I would say.
Okay. Thank you for introducing that to the conversation.
Well, I just want to make sure that we've touched all our bases. We've tugged every nasal hair we have at our availability.
I did one of the first things that I thought when I listened to this song again, and this was a couple of months ago now, that actually it feels more like a Ruttles song than
Yeah, yeah. The
or
delivery helps with that interpretation of
yeah.
it as well, for sure.
It just feels as I think especially because you have that playful melody, it sounds like something someone would write if they were trying to do something that sounded Beatlesy.
Yeah.
Which is ironic. Bearing in mind this is the Beatles.
So
Um,
you're saying it sounds like a generic take on themselves
Kind
then?
of, yeah, yeah. I'm just trying to think of some of those songs that were accused of being, Beatles pastiches. And I can't remember who the band was, but I seem to remember in the mid '80s there was a song called "Keeping the Dream Alive." I'll maybe we'll have a pause in recording and I'll look that one up, or maybe I'll let you talk for a couple of minutes and I won't be listening, but I'll be googling. And then of course, "Sowing the Seeds of Love" is you know
Oh yeah.
regarded as being that kind of psychedelic era pastiche and whatever by Oasis and stuff like that. And I think sort of falls into that, where you could imagine that someone has written it attempting to sound like not just the Beatles, but the Mop Tops.
Definitely. And I think a lot of again, for some reason, the Beautiful South are coming to mind as well. They have a lot of really pronounced kind of Beatles influences, but I can't think of immediately off the top of my head of one song which specifically uh, pulls that to mind. Anything with a bit of brass on it always leans in that
Right.
direction. So, um, but I can't. I'm trying to think. Not like Good as Gold, Stupid as Mud. Great song though that is. But yeah, there's plenty of bands that are coming that second generation. But yeah, those
Yeah.
kind of early, yeah, the earlier years aren't the ones that tend to get most commonly copied, and particularly this kind of like this sort of mid period that we're in now, where we have it's the cannabis years. It's the sort of stoned out kind of blissful stuff before psychedelia really kicks in properly. And there isn't a great I don't know how much mileage there is really in that. Like there's this, and then obviously you have Dylan at the same time, and a few other bands who are sort of projecting that, but it doesn't. Firstly, it doesn't last very long, but secondly, a
Hmm.
lot of the material in it is pretty surface. There's not an awful lot more to do, and I think that kind of has come out of our discussion at Help as well. Like we've said repeatedly that this album is more than the sum of its parts, which it is. But taking each song individually, you kind of you see the parts that go into it, and they're all fine. Like there's been a couple of high points, a couple of low points, but it's been the average of it has been pretty okay. But there just isn't necessarily a lot of traction there.
And that, yeah, suggests a flaw, a flaw in our programming, in the sense
Not at
that,
all.
yeah, and
That's
that,
why we discuss the albums as well, Andrew. That's we have corrected our flaw.
it's also why we're not necessarily going beyond dozens of. Anyway, Freiheit is the band. It was a 1988 song by Mushna Freiheit, also known as Freiheit in English. Now, it did make the UK charts and actually was recorded in Abbey Road Studios.
There you
Anyway,
go.
so there's one to look. You will. I promise you, if you listen to it, you will recognise it from days of yore. I'm obviously talking to JG there, dear listener. You probably won't recognise it, but a top 20 hit here in the UK. Yeah, so yeah, I think to develop your point, of course, that I think a key indicator is how few of these songs make it onto the final tours that they do as well. Beyond the obvious ones, it's not as though they're plucking many of these album tracks and thinking, I know we're now going to go play them live. So they don't get a chance to really hone them, because again, as will happen, we've spoken about this before with some songs, it's kind of a one and done. They write it, they rehearse it, prepare it for recording, they record it usually over a session lasting a few hours, and then that song is gone, never to be played again, other than by Bryan Ferry, Peter Cetera, and Gary U.S. Bonds.
It's really annoying to look this song up on Spotify to try and work out who's covered it because there are so many songs called "It's Only Love," and
Oh,
I got mildly excited because there was a ZZ Top song called "It's Only Love," and I was trying to imagine what ZZ Top playing this song would sound like, but they don't.
that's why you need no, not set list. What is it? Secondhand songs.
Yes, that would have been useful, but also it was just kind of interesting to go, no, whoa, well, that's no, yeah, no, well, no, make it stop.
Fair enough. Yeah, no. I couldn't bring myself to listen to the Peter Cetera one, partly because
It's Peter
I
Cetera.
well, yeah, I just sort of yeah, he has a voice that I can't get on with.
That's
Um,
fair.
yeah, I guess the see, the lyrics is the key bit here. There isn't really much to talk about in terms of that instrumentation, because it is driven by that guitar. And I don't know whether you like it, but it's good if you do. That's then the counterpoint to our Bryan Ferry conversation, because I just think it sounds a bit twangy. It sounds like person who's bought their first guitar and first training amplifier playing something through it that, once they upgrade, they're never going to play it like that again. Um, so yeah,
I mean,
you,
that's pretty close to exactly what happens, really. This is when they start messing about with the
but
Leslie
they have a
speaker and whatever.
studio. They have a whole
Yeah,
studio, and I
yeah.
know that they retrospectively they might have said, oh well, the Rolling Stones were going off to the States and recording in these amazing studios. We were stuck at Abbey Road and the technology wasn't as good, and that's why, God, the Beatles, they're re-releasing some of the American records, but they were slightly remastered for the American audience because they had the technology, but they still had some good technology that they could have done something with if they had wanted to. Maybe they thought this was good.
Maybe. I don't know. I've always had a bit of a question mark over this, and I think this is something we'll talk about a little bit more when we get to the tail end of Rubber Soul and Revolver. But listening to those albums next to the stuff that the Stones were putting out, which was recorded in America, I don't think that the Stones stuff sounds better for having more technology, particularly if you take something like Norwegian Wood against Paint It Black, because we're in similar kind of like arrangement and instruments. Like, I don't think Paint It Black sounds any noticeably better recorded than
Yeah,
Norwegian Wood, to take
yeah.
one example. But this is definitely a conversation we'll return to because I have questions.
Oh, you're saving the questions.
I'm saving the questions. So that's what we'll return to means. Yes.
Questions about the recording, the
All of
studios.
the above.
Well, that's two things. Both anyway. Okay.
Okay. Anyway.
Right. So while we're on the Rolling Stones, I thought I would just kind of remind, because I'm trying not to be too unfair to Mr. Lennon. Um, that some of the vocal performance in this I think is really strong. And yeah, the lyrics are pretty bland. But then, he's not the only one. And so I then had a look at some of the lyrics on the Rolling Stones albums from '65, and I thought, no, let's be fair, because they weren't writing many songs on that. It was only, I think, the last three or four songs on that uh, that one where it was their own songs. So I went forward to '66 and Aftermath, and there's some pretty ropey stuff on there, and and also, of course, some comparatively distasteful stuff as well. Under my thumb.
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
It's but some of the other stuff is just. I mean, for a start, I cannot forgive and get off of my cloud. I mean, I think the off of is something that, as someone who's worked really, really hard with the young people's grammar, I just find that particularly an irritating Americanism. Whether it is, I don't know, but off of just oof, yeah. Anyway, and there's some really kind of bland, crappy stuff, but it's not the only one. So I had a look at some of the big-ish hits of 1965, and it's really subjective as to whether or not they're any good. So I'll let you decide. And out of context, of course, I think it always sounds worse as well, because these are not meant to be poetry. These are meant to be sung with, rhythm and harmonies going on, and all of that adds to the character of it. So
That is an important thing, though. It's
it
just
is
I don't want to just gloss over that. That it is worth mentioning. Lyrics aren't poetry. They're not meant to be read on the page or whatever. They are meant to be performed. So yeah. Anyway.
absolutely, and books of lyrics, yeah, not a fan.
Yeah. Same.
So I give you this example. It's not unusual to go out at any time, but when I see you out and about, it's such a crime. If you should ever wanna be loved by anyone, it's not unusual. It happens every day.
No matter what they say.
And you see, but that's the thing that makes it, isn't it? The fact that it then continues in, and
Yeah.
and you've got that kind of stop start bit that goes with it. But on the page, That's just really dull, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. But it's almost impossible to read those lyrics or hear them and not hear Tom
Absolutely.
Jones's performance of them. And that's precisely the point that we were just talking about. It's the performance of how they are. They're not meant to be read on the page. And yeah,
And also, it's a development as well. So I was looking at some. The Yardbirds had three really big hits in '65, all written by Graham Gouldman, who then went on to be in 10cc, and wrote some really quite interesting stuff. I'm not a massive fan of 10cc, but there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. Um, and yet, if you look at, for example, For Your Love, lyrically it is pretty simplistic, and but he was 18. He then went on and developed. Lennon is starting to write some more interesting lyrics, but he's still writing some crap, and that's okay. That's okay. I've got another example, the Dave Clark Five from Catch Us If You Can, a top five smash. Now we gotta run. No more time for fun. When we're getting angry, we will yell with all of our might. You know? I mean,
yeah,
however, it sold records and it was considered strong enough to be the title song of their movie.
there you
Yeah.
go.
So,
You quite
you
like
know
a bit of
what?
Dave Clark 5, don't you?
Well, I love Glad All Over, but that's more of a cultural kind of football thing. And growing up in a particular part of South London, yeah. So although I mean they were Tottenham boys, but my part of South London, the main football team around there adopted Glad All Over as a bit of an anthem. So I have a soft spot for that. I mean lyrically, it's not a great song. You say that you love me. Say that you love me all of the time. All of the time. Say that you need me. Say that you need me. Always be mine. And I'm feeling glad. It's you know, Nobel Prize. No. But then it's it's about an emotional response. And my initial emotional response was to zero in on the lyrics and go, oh God, bloody Lennon. But then you listen to it a few times and you think, well, how often do I really? And I've said this before, quite often, dear listener. I'm repeating myself, I know, but tough. Get over it. Go find yourself another Beatles podcast. There aren't any out there, are there? So you're stuck with us. Yeah. Um, it's that emotional response. How often do you listen to all of the lyrics, or how often do you just pick out a phrase that you like, and then sort of attach something to the whole song? I think it's very rare that people will listen to an entire narrative and build their views on a song based around a whole lyric. So it washes over you. It's perfectly passable, um, perfectly forgettable, but in the moment, it's all right.
Lovely. Well, it sounds like we're inching our way towards a score, and perhaps we should be yarding away from it. But anyway, what do you want to give it?
Oh, I mean, it's a 5 out of 10. But it is a very middling song. It's not awful. We're not in Mr. Moonlight territory here.
We never will be.
No, no.
Well,
Not until we do Beatles Stuffology Revisit, where, folks, we revisit every episode of the Stuffology podcast and we rate our views and update our thoughts on each song. And then we'll go around and we'll do it all again. And in fact, what we'll do is we'll do a reaction video as well, where we'll listen to it and we will react in real. Anyway, yeah, you get the idea.
yeah. I think we just need to make it clear that that's not happening. And also, I'm going to give it a 4. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
it's nothing much.
yeah,
Lovely. Right. Well, we can turn to mailbags. That's nice. We haven't done
yes.
that for a while. So our mailbag is present.
Can, can I
We
start
can.
with that? Because I've got an absolute corker of a message from Instagram. Apologies to Candice Hornick, who messaged us in August. I really haven't done much on social media. I keep meaning to. But anyway, JG, I'd love to know your reaction to this.
Lovely.
Candice says that apparently we're the perfect fit to represent their jewellery collection. So they'd like to offer us 3 free, yes, free pieces of our choice. We just have to drop them a DM, and Sean will get it done for us.
Oh,
What
that's
what
delightful.
what, what do you think?
Oh, I think we should do it. I mean, yeah, it's about
Cool.
time we got some bloody sponsorship in this podcast.
Do you have
Sick fed
some?
up of doing this for the love of music. I want some hard cold cash.
Do you actually have some correspondence other than some nice
I
social media spam?
I do indeed. We have heard from Ken with two N's. He says, "Hi guys, so glad you're feeling better and continue with the series. This song is sorry, this email I should say is about you've got to hide your love away. He says, I do love the song, but after hearing you guys discuss it, it has made me wonder why. I'm a musician as a hobby. Well, good. That's good. We're encouraging people to question their default assumptions. Excellent. He says, I'm a musician as a hobby and playing in tune, but there are two bits which have subliminally maybe caught my attention. The leading line in the verse is a chorus which changes from G, D, F, G. That F is very unusual. Typically in the key of G, you would play G, D, C, G. Also unusual at the time was the descending bass after the "Let me hear you say." But now, and now is in inverted commas, which I think is very important. But now I do see your point to some of the lyrics. Almost good, almost as if they were saving space to words that they never found alternatives for.
Oh, that's
Um,
nice
as
of her.
as an aside, another good thing about the song is how crowds love to sing along to the chorus, especially after a few drinks. Love you guys, Ken with two N's. Thank you,
Yeah,
Ken.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say his technical knowledge is slightly greater than mine, slightly, but yeah, interesting to say. And he's right. There is a kind of a. I think the hay gives it that kind of drunken pub type song vibe.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
not quite
Hey!
Wonderwall, is it? But
No, it's good. But yeah, I mean, it's an interestingly constructed song. I agree, and if that's the thing that hooks somebody into it, then absolutely, then that's what works.
popular songs and emotional response. It doesn't matter what it is. If it gets you, it gets you.
Exactly. Lovely. Thanks, Ken. Much appreciated. Do you want to make any final points, Andrew?
No,
Good. Well, then we can
that's an
bugger off.
underwhelming end to the episode.
well, I feel we've nailed that pretty conclusively at this stage. Right, good. Well, you can really get a hold of us. You can contact us by email. We are BeatlesStuffology@gmail.com. You can get us on what's left of Twitter at Beatles_ology, and we are Beatles Stuffology on Instagram. You can also find my blog at www.jgmcquarrie.scot, where I write about books and movies and TV shows and just whatever happens to catch my fancy. Please like, rate, and review us on whatever podcatcher you're using so that other people can find the show. Next episode, well, of course, we carry on through side 2, and we will be talking about You Like Me Too Much. But until then, keep listening.